Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning into the show. This is your host, Adelia Kirchner, and you are listening to Subtle Rampage.
Warning, the following program contains critical thinking, honest opinions, viewpoints on culture that may seem conservative, and a positive view on absolute detestable things such as marriage and children. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, hello everybody. Today I just wanted to take a second and go over a few things because I feel like people aren't aware. I'm not like other girls. I'm different and more chill and just overall better than any of the other females any of you might know. Even if you are a female, I am better than you. My apologies for any inconveniences this may cause. But, we all have our burdens to bear. Now that right there is an attitude that would fall under the pick-me behavior category. For those of you who don't know, a pick-me is typically a girl whose kind of whole personality is like a reflection of the phrase, I'm not like other girls. An example of this is like a girl who has a guy best friend or all guy friends, and instead of just being normal about it, constantly makes a big deal about how it's because girls are too dramatic or they just get along better with guys. But the reason I bring this up is because I guess maybe a couple months ago, I started getting a bunch of videos in my YouTube Shorts feed. And maybe that makes me sound sort of like a dad or a grandma, getting my vertical videos from the YouTube Shorts column instead of TikTok. But regardless, I started getting all of these videos in my feed, particularly of this woman named Pearl, who has a podcast where, from what I can tell, she tends to just facilitate conversations between various other people she has on the show. Or shows. I can't really tell. Her online presence kind of stresses me out a bit. It's very chaotic. There's just a lot going on. There's a lot of typos, a lot of different playlists on her YouTube channel. I don't know. I took a couple looks at it to try and get it straight in my head, and it just wasn't working for me. So it kind of stressed me out. So I just moved on from that, to be honest. Most of her guests that she has on the podcast, from what I can tell, have English accents. So either she spends a lot of time in the UK or that's where she lives just on a regular basis. Either way, I was getting so many clips of her podcast in my feed. And most of the clips that I was getting were of Pearl herself talking. At first, I was like, who even is this? I really don't care. I was just skipping past them. But then I think I probably, stopped on one day, and I was like, oh my gosh, this woman irks me, irritates me, badly. Why? And at first I was like, well, maybe it's just her voice. But then I gave her a fair shot. I listened to some more of her stuff, I gave her a chance. And if you need a sort of barometer for the type of subject matter that's discussed on Pearl's podcast, I would deem it female Andrew Tate, but with less cuss words and more English accents, and with the obnoxiousness turned down maybe by 0.5 percentage point. That's kind of how I'm seeing it at the moment. You might feel a different way, but that's how I feel about it. When I was doing research on this, a lot of people who've done YouTube videos already or have kind of taken to their TikTok to, respond to Pearl, they seem to share my general conclusion of a female Andrew Tate vibe. But I think that we have different reasons for disliking that vibe, if that makes sense. I think a lot of people are quick to, go, oh, I hate Andrew Tate. And I think that a lot of them, when you ask them why, at least from what I see online and stuff, is people go, oh, well, he's a misogynist, or he hates women, or, he talks badly about women, or he doesn't respect women. And I think my problem with Andrew Tate, and consequently with Pearl as well, kind of comes down to a question of morals and values and how you're deciding to live your own personal life. I'm not just jumping on the bandwagon of hate. I just don't necessarily care to listen to these people. because they kind of annoy me. But considering the fact that both of these people actually have quite the substantial following online, there's obviously people who enjoy their content, and there's obviously people that agree with them and feel that their lives are somehow enriched by listening to what these people have to say. Which is where you get videos of Andrew Tate, like, super fans, okay, people who are, like, dedicated to this man, going out on the street with a little microphone attached to, like, a kitchen utensil, and then, like, you know, going up and asking people, do you know who Andrew Tate is? And they go, yeah, or unfortunately, yes, or sadly, yes, and so on and so forth. And then the Andrew Tate fan goes, okay, well, why do you not like him? And then in the videos that I have seen, people either don't know how to answer, or they just say, you know, misogyny, but they can't think of, like, an immediate example to back up their claim of misogyny. Now, I guess what I find kind of funny about these videos is it's always this, like, oh my gosh, they don't even know what they're talking about. They don't even know why they don't like Andrew Tate. That's crazy. Like, have an answer ready. Like, you're just hating on him for no reason. And it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. But have you never disliked someone for absolutely no reason? Because I feel like I have several times, and I'm not allowed to be the only crappy person in existence. So I'm just gonna continue this conversation under the assumption that you have also felt this way towards another person. You have disliked somebody for absolutely no good reason, okay? Like, people say the name of this specific person, and you roll your eyes, or you sigh in disappointment, okay? And they go, why don't you like that person? Or, like, what's wrong? I thought you, like, this person is so nice. And you have to sit there, and with a straight face, tell this perfectly normal, sane human being standing across from you that you absolutely cannot stand the person they're talking about because their voice is like a smidge too high, or they talk about their dog too much. And it's like, and you say it out loud, and it's like, wow, that's a really stupid reason to not like somebody. But disregarding that, the whole disliking somebody for no reason, that if somebody feels like Andrew Tate is, like, douchey or a jerk or some other choice words that I won't say on here, like, is that not a valid reason for them to dislike the guy? Like, just in general, if you have a coworker and they are constantly rude to you and the people around them, or at least they constantly make the people around them feel badly, whether or not it might generally be considered actually mean or rude or whatever, if somebody constantly makes you feel uncomfortable or constantly makes you feel looked down upon or constantly makes condescending remarks towards you, you probably wouldn't like them, right? And I feel like that's a valid reason to not like somebody. I mean, it doesn't mean you hate them, but, like, you know, it's a valid reason to not want to listen to somebody, to not want to spend time around somebody, to not want to follow somebody online. I think it's a valid reason. And, you know, obviously some people are a bit more rough around the edges than others. And so the way they show compassion, the way they show they care or have empathy for someone can be drastically different from the way you might think they ought to do so. But generally, if a person consistently, like, enjoys rubbing people the wrong way with their words and finds it amusing, they're probably going to get on people's nerves, and people probably aren't going to like them. And I think that's kind of the situation we have here. I mean, if I had to pinpoint a specific reason as to why people don't like Andrew Tate and why people don't like this Pearl lady, her Just Pearly Things channel, okay? It's because of the way that they talk about others, I think. Whether it's men or women or whoever. Now, with all of that being said, I'd like us to spend some time today and let's trudge together through several of Pearl's videos. And I know this might evoke some anger, might cause some frustration, possibly some confusion as to why I can't really get behind this woman's thought process. But you know what? We're gonna give it a go. We're gonna give it a go, okay? That's what we're gonna do. That's it. I have the final say. This is my show. I will, however, preface this by saying a big thing on these shows, and on hers in particular, is the whole idea of this traditional woman in comparison to this modern woman. And to me, I'm kind of like, okay, traditional woman, as of when? Like, are you referring to the 1920s as what would be a traditional woman? Are you referring to the 1950s or the 70s? Like, are you talking Bible times here? Like, I need some context. But as far as I can tell, from Pearl's perspective, it seems to be women from the 1950s. Don't, like, wager any bets on me being right about that. I'm just going based off of what I've seen of her channel. It's kind of like, ma'am, were you around in the 50s? Because I'm pretty sure not every woman was the stereotypical 1950s woman. I'm sure there were doting mothers and wives who cooked and cleaned all day and had those, those cute little dresses, okay? And had everything all prim and proper as possible when their husband got home from work. But for goodness sakes, okay? Women were still a part of the workforce. There were women who didn't cook, didn't clean. I think some people have this hyper-idealized version of a 1950s woman in their heads, and they're not accounting for the differences in religious views, political views, geographical locations, what their husbands did for work, if these women were even married. I mean, for some reason, and this might be completely impractical, I get the feeling that some of those 1950s women were like full-time school teachers. Okay, they were like up and at 'em 5 days a week just to teach freaking middle schoolers. And maybe these women had husbands, maybe they didn't. Maybe they cooked dinner for their, hypothetical husband. Maybe they didn't. Oh, God forbid these women might have stopped on the way home after school and gotten a burger from a fast food restaurant. Because, hey, by the way, fast food existed in the 50s. In fact, the first McDonald's, the first Mickey D's, according to Google, because I did so much research on this. But the first one, okay, it opened up in 1955 in California. So, you know what? Maybe there was that single, or maybe not single, middle school teacher in 1955 living in California, and she went and taught school all day, and then on her way home she grabbed a McDouble, because I'm sure that was on the original menu. I have no idea. But either way, you know what? She got that McDouble, and she went home, and she did not cook dinner for herself or her hypothetical husband. So, my question is that the traditional woman that we're talking about here? Because if it is, I come pretty darn close to it. I mean, I won't eat McDonald's because it makes my stomach hurt, but we can go to Whataburger. I'm okay with that. Now, I understand that stereotypes are based on a reality a large portion of the time. I mean, they kind of have to be. Stereotypes usually stem from somewhere. They come up somewhere. Like, they're not just figments of somebody's imagination. However, I would argue that in the case of the 1950s woman, it wasn't just that there were a lot of women living their lives a certain way. I think it was also that society advertised to women that they wanted to live their lives in this particular way. And so also I think in 2022, we look back at the 1950s, we look back at the 1920s, and what do we have from those time periods? We have different forms of media to tell us what the time period was like. We have writings, we have advertisements, we have, TV from the times that had TV, okay? Like, we have all these things to kind of put together, piece together, and decipher what that time in history was like. And what I'm saying here is that when we do piece together what we have to come up with what something was like, we don't always get everything. We miss a few things. So just because we might know what this group of people did or thought or said doesn't mean we know what everybody else did or thought or said. And, I just kind of, I mean, it might sound stupid to some people, but I'm kind of the approach of, if I wasn't there, I don't know for sure. I don't know anything for sure if I was not there. And even then, even then, I don't know things for sure because perspectives can be limited. We all have our own perspectives. Two people can be the same place, same time, and have two completely different stories. That's just how it is. But as far as the 50s go, people have different walks of life. You can say a 1950s woman is a traditional woman, or you can say a 1970s woman is a traditional woman, but in those time periods, they would have been considered modern women, okay? And then not every woman lived the same lifestyle. There were different socioeconomic classes, there were different racial groups, there were different, all that stuff, and, you know, don't let me lose you now just because I'm starting to sound like a liberal, okay? I'm being serious. I mean, people have different walks of life. Not everybody had the prim and proper little lifestyle that we like to think a 1950s woman had. And something I would be curious to know personally, of the women who did have that stereotypical 1950s woman experience, okay, how many of them were secret bathroom smokers? I'm just kind of wondering, like, that's just a personal curiosity. You know, that's just a me thing. I just wonder, you know. But anyways, I don't personally think that everything about our stereotypical 1950s woman is inherently bad. I mean, I think there are plenty of people who would look at that now and say that it's still too modern of a version of women. I think some people might argue that we need to go back a little further to actually get to a traditional woman. Regardless of that, okay, what is a modern woman? I mean, isn't that just the way that women are right now? Okay, I don't know. But if today's women are modern women, what if the year was 1922? Okay? What would we consider women in 1922 if we were alive in 1922 and it was 1922 right now? We would say modern women. Okay, what about the 1800s? What if the year was 1832? I don't know why I'm going with twos, but, you know, that's what we're doing. Okay, what if the year was 1832? I would call women in 1832 modern women because that's, like, as far into the future as we have been at this point. But now we're in 2022, and so women are considered modern women once again, right? And I'm obviously approaching this subject from the point of view of a 20-year-old in the year that we live in now. But I don't think I'm any less qualified to talk about it than these, like, late 20s, early 30s people that are hosting these podcasts, okay? Like, they weren't really alive or sentient back then either. Anyways, I think this brings us to our first clip from Pearl's show.
But the world doesn't owe you understanding. So men don't go to women and say, accept me short, accept me broke, accept me fat. But we go to them and say, accept us ran through. That's not a fair deal.
Well, a lot of women do accept men that are short and broke.
Not if you look at the data. Not if you look at the data. Men only swipe right on, or women only swipe right on dating apps 5% of the time. 5%. On the high end, 20%. Women do not accept, and that's the number one place that people are meeting today. So women we do not accept men that are short, broke, and fat. Historically, even throughout all of history, most men didn't even get to reproduce.
Now, first off, okay, can we just all appreciate together the piano music in the background? It's fairly cheesy, but, you know, we all have to do what we have to do, so I'm not gonna knock it entirely. Royalty-free music aside, what I do want to address about this clip is this sort of hardcore generalizing that she does, and, you know, she's not the only one that does it, okay? This is just who I'm talking about today, but it's gonna show up in other clips too. It's hard to listen to because it's like, okay, you're really not seeing the big picture. Like, I want to know what men she hangs out with and what women she hangs out with, because I kind of have a problem where it feels like people on these podcasts, they seem to feel like they hang out with high quality, and these are their words, high quality men, and then not high quality women. And my question is, how is that my problem? And how is that all of society's problem? That you can't hang out with better people. I mean, she says that men don't come to women saying, accept me short, accept me broke, accept me fat. And I don't really understand that, like, generalization of men don't do this. And I'm like, yeah, they do. just not all of them. Just like she says, women come to men saying, accept me, ran through. I'm like, okay, well, maybe that happens, but like, not all of women go to a man saying that. And then my next comment, she has a guest on here, right, that says, okay, but women do accept men broke, they accept men short, they accept men fat. They do. And then Pearl kind of like is like, no, they don't, because dating apps, and that's the number one place people meet now. And I think this is kind of a running thing on these types of shows. Statistics are huge. Those little polls, those numbers that are easily manipulated. I mean, come on. You're telling me at this point not every single person in the United States has heard about the book How to Lie with Statistics? Really? Is it just us homeschoolers? Like, really? But I'm being serious here because I know plenty of women who have been dating, like, seriously for years now, or got engaged, or are supposed, or who got married, okay, to somebody who fits in one of these three categories, if not multiple of them. And I don't think any of them met on a dating app. My thing, too, here is that you have to consider the intentions of the people that are on dating apps. And I'm not saying that somebody with good intentions won't be found on a dating app. I'm just saying that a large majority of people using dating apps are not necessarily looking for the serious lifetime commitment of marrying somebody, of having their children, and so I think that just kind of cancels out the whole, like, well, statistically, blah, 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 blah thing, because if that's not where people are finding their marriage partners, if that's not where people are finding their future husbands and baby daddies, okay, then that's not where it's happening, and you can't use that to generalize how all women come to men and how all men come to women and how many women won't accept a quote-unquote average man or whatever terms you want to use, right? And then let's get one thing kind of straight here for a second. She brings up guys not saying, like, they're not saying, hey, accept me short. Well, if they're not, even though I'm pretty sure they are, then they should be, because that's something you can't freaking change. Okay, that's not the same thing as being broke or overweight. Okay? Being short or being tall is just, it is what it is. You literally can't change it. Okay, I'm tall for a girl, right? But I can't really do anything about that. And then another thing I want to say is with, like, the women saying, accept me ran through comment. Okay, in general, from what I can tell, there seems to be this attitude of blame towards women in podcasts like Pearl's, like Andrew Tate's. There's this blame on women for, like, pretty much all the not so great aftermath of the sexual revolution. Okay? Like, and I'm not entirely sure that that's where the blame belongs, at least not all of it. And to me, it's kind of like if you were to be like, hey, Black women, you guys get more abortions than anybody else. What is wrong with you? Like, that's kind of how it feels to me. Like, you're putting the blame on one of the groups of people that is most affected by the problem, when in reality, they didn't necessarily choose this. Like, women 100 years ago didn't necessarily look at their lives and go, hey, you know what I want? I want the norm to be casual sex because I never want to be in a committed relationship ever. Like, really? You think that you think there was the foresight on this? Really? So, I think, these women who, in some people's words, would be considered ran through, I mean, like, where's the compassion for the fact that they're a byproduct of so many things that we do wrong as a society? Also, do I hear a double standard coming? Oh, yes, I do. It's perfectly fine for men to have as many casual sexual partners as they would like. But if a woman does it, it's not okay. And here we are, right back at the start of the problem. Because when you have a double standard, how do you fix it? You even it out. And who's more likely to care about the fact that there is a double standard? Probably the party who doesn't get to do what the other party gets to do. Is that making sense to everybody? Okay, it's like if, you go to Christian summer camp. We've all been there, okay? We go to Christian summer camp. The guys are allowed to take their shirts off when you go canoeing, and you can stare at their abs all day long. But the girls, not only do they have to wear a one piece, but they must also wear a t-shirt and shorts. Is that a double standard? Yes, it is. Does one party feel unfairly treated? Yes, they do. Who is more likely to want to fix the double standard in this situation? The girls. Golly gee, I'm so smart. Am I not so smart? I always know the answers to my own questions. It's great. But I think in that situation, as a conservative adult, okay, I would look at that and be like, okay, well, obviously, letting the girls balance out the double standard by, not being modest and just wearing bikinis, or, whatever, is probably not the best idea. It's probably not going to, produce the best, most purest Christian-y results. So, generally speaking, the best way to even out things in this scenario would be to say, okay, guys, your swim shorts are already shorts pretty much, just make sure they're like a certain length, and throw on a t-shirt. Problem solved. Everybody feels fairly treated. They're all pretty much covered up the same. This way everybody's modest. This way there is no double standard. Problem solved. I'm a genius. You're welcome. But when it comes to the sexual habits of grown adults, things aren't always that simple because there's no summer camp director for like the entire country because we're all grown adults who are supposed to be able to make our own decisions and make good decisions, right? Right. Either way, we end up with what we have ended up with, okay? And it is what it is, and I think we need to have compassion because I think that I didn't start the sexual revolution, and neither did the other 20-year-old my age who, in Pearl's words, would be considered ran through. So, I don't think it's necessarily the nicest thing to say, is what I was trying to get at in all of this, I guess. Anyways, drum roll or whatever, please, because on to the next clip, guys.
It's often like women want the freedom and they want the benefits that come with old orders.
Okay, pause. Old order? Ma'am, are we talking Amish people here? I thought we were talking stereotypical 1950s woman, but now we're talking old order? As in old order Amish? I don't think that's what she meant, okay? But like, what else do you mean when you say old order? And she also says freedom, and benefits. And yes, I'm sure there are benefits to being old order Amish. You don't have to listen to Pearl's opinion because it will never come across your YouTube Shorts feed, because you will never have a YouTube Shorts feed, because you will never have a YouTube account, because you will never have any sort of device on which you could possibly have a YouTube account. Therefore, you would definitely live a much happier life, I would assume. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's yeah. And as far as freedom goes for women in the old order Amish communities, I'm sure they feel okay. I mean, they might not like everything, but I'm sure the old order Amish women are perfectly fine with the way they live their life at this point. But Pearl is the one I have a question for. I just kind of wonder if she were to look at an old order Amish community and see the way that women lived, I just wonder where she would find the so-called freedoms. Because, I mean, I could recognize what they might consider freedoms or whatever, but I just wonder if Pearl would be able to consider anything that they consider a freedom, you know? You get what I'm saying?
And they want the benefits that come with old order. So they want like the traditional men, the guys that pay for anything, but we're not traditional women. So we're not virgins anymore. We're not young anymore when we get married. And so it's like we take away the things that men value while offering, like, we require more and offer less.
Okay. All right. She's just talking in general. She's talking like, you know, it doesn't matter how many partners the guy has had. It doesn't matter how highly the guy values sex. Like, if you are not a virgin, he, you know, like, your value has gone down pretty much. Okay, so my question is, if you're a guy, okay, and you go to, you know, take a girl out to dinner, or, you know, if you were hypothetically getting engaged and you were going to pay for the engagement ring, okay, or whatever it is, if you were married and you were simply going to buy your wife some chocolate strawberries for Valentine's Day or whatever, any of those situations, would you be inclined to not pay for those things just based off the fact that your wife isn't a virgin, or your girlfriend isn't a virgin, or the lady that you haven't even really talked to yet but you're going out on a date with tonight isn't a virgin? Like, I'm sorry, what? And also, if all a guy values about me is whether or not I am a virgin, or whether or not I'm young, I still have my youth, okay, like, I understand those things are, you know, important, they're attractive, whatever, statistics, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I understand. It makes sense. But if those are the only two things that are important to a man, what is he even doing trying to date? Like, even if somebody is a virgin, even if somebody is young, okay, if they have any sort of, like, you know, deep understanding of the way the world functions, okay, why would they want somebody? Why would they want to marry a man who wouldn't be marrying them if they weren't young and a virgin? That doesn't make sense. Okay, and then this last thing she says here about how we women require more now but offer less than I guess we used to. I think that I would argue that we as a society, men and women, in the dating realm, in the marriage realm, in all of that, I think that we all require more and offer less. Like, or at least require the same amount as in decades past, but offer less. And I think that that's not necessarily applicable to every single person, but I think if we looked at the United States as a whole, that's the perception that most people would have. And I don't think that it just applies to women. I mean, maybe I'm being biased here or whatever, and, you know, if you feel that way, call me out, whatever, but I don't feel like that's the case. I mean, I'll listen to guys rant about girls and dating girls and how difficult it is to find a good woman all day long, but if I have to listen to that, then you better take me seriously when I rant about guys and how hard it is to find a good guy. Like, you know, it goes both ways, because there are good people out there for men. There are good people out there for women. Like, there are good people. There is somebody like the person you are looking for. It's just, I don't know what to tell you. Certain values are not, you know, highly esteemed in our culture anymore. And, you know, I don't like that. But we do just have to roll with it. I mean, there's not much you can do except for either roll with it and hope for the best, or get upset and be rude or angry and hide in a corner ranting about the opposite sex instead of actually finding somebody of the opposite sex to, you know, date, marry, and have children with. You know, your pick. You can choose. And just to kind of add on to that whole thing, there were several clips of Pearl's podcast that had to do with marriage. And I think I've kind of come to the conclusion that her podcast and like Andrew Tate and honestly a couple of the other less popular, like what would be deemed alpha male podcasts by other people, whatever. A lot of these podcasts, they seem to view marriage in a weird way, okay? And when I say weird, I mean there's people who think that marriage is pointless. Like, they think there's, like, what's the point? Like, most of them end in divorce, or, like, you can do everything you can do in marriage outside of marriage, or, like, whatever their reason for thinking it's pointless is, there's people who think marriage is pointless. But I think these people, somehow, they it's like they see a point in marriage, but at the same time, they don't see the value in marriage. Like, I don't know where the connections are made in their brain for this, but it's like they see the point in marriage, but at the same time, they hold no value in it, and so to them, marriage is meaningless. It's not pointless, it's meaningless. So I set those clips aside because I do want to talk more about the whole idea of marriage and people's opinions on it. So I'll get to that at a later date. So be prepared for more obnoxious podcast clips. But I guess really what Pearl's podcast clips kind of come down to, what Andrew Tate's podcast clips kind of come down to, is the whole, there's no such thing as bad publicity, okay? It's that whole concept, right? As long as my name is getting out there, that's all that matters. As long as I'm getting views, as long as I'm getting interaction with people, that's what matters. You know, if I piss some people off along the way, so be it. And it's like, okay, in theory, and in a generally acceptable amount of circumstances, that attitude is perfectly fine, right? Because right now, I know that I'm probably pissing some people off with some of the things that I've said on my podcast thus far, and I probably will in the future, and that's fine with me. But at the same time, I think in the context of these particular shows that I'm talking about, there seems to be this thing where a controversial thing is said just because it is controversial. Like something that's gonna upset the women viewers is said, I think, just to upset the women viewers. Or something that is meant to, like, trigger people is said because it's going to trigger people. Like, they're saying these things on their shows, and then they're making them the little vertical videos that go viral everywhere, and they're doing that on purpose because they know that that's going to get views. They know that that's going to draw people to interact with their channel, interact with their show, whether that's positive or negative interaction. I don't think they really care. And I personally, I don't get it, because it does put off a certain lack of maturity, and this might not make entirely too much sense to you, but it should after I play this clip of Pearl talking about obesity.
You're looking for exceptions rather than the rule. Like, you're looking for the exception. Most people are fat because they eat too much. And don't exercise.
That's how they get fat. You have to eat too much.
So, right. And so when I say, what I was talking about in that post was leaving the whales. So I was talking about if a girl gets a ring, okay, and then she's 120 and she decides to gain 100 pounds to 220, I said, leave the whale, because I'm sorry, you made the choice to gain 100 pounds. That's disrespectful to your husband. And, you know, you can disagree with calling her a whale, but like, what else are you going to call her? That's a big woman.
And I believe it was that specific clip, if not a different one about the same subject, that inspired like a ton of backlash from people who are a little, you know, overweight. And their backlash inspired a video where she doubles down on the usage of the term whale and saying that she's being attacked by whales. It's a whale attack. So I'll play a part of that. It's a pretty long video, so I'll just play a part so you can hear her attitude.
This week I was harassed. My family was harassed. for talking about whales. Now, today on TikTok, a clip was taken of me. It was a bit out of context. You know, sometimes maybe I make fun of them a little too hard. But it's like I make fun of everyone. I feel like if you think you're special, you're not. You're going to get made fun of just like everyone else. Anyways, so there's a clip of me on TikTok that I said, name a girl that looks good at 300 pounds. All the girls that were 300 pounds would basically take the sound of me saying that no one looks good at 300 pounds and say, and then they would just show me pictures of their blubber. I'm like, they would just show me pictures of their blubber. And I'm just like, okay, you're just proving my point. And then they would like put Instagram pictures of me and try to say that I was the uglier one. I'm like, guys, you were just proving my point. You're proving my point too. And I'm like, okay, if your point is that I don't deserve a 6-figure guy either, I would be like, probably not. Anyways, then they start tagging my ex-boyfriend and being like, well, wasn't your ex-boyfriend overweight? And I'm like, you don't need to bring him into this.
I guess I just personally don't understand why a grown adult would feel the need to call a whole group of people whales. I mean, even as like a small child, like I went to the hospital for something, I saw an extremely obese person, and even little kid me knew better than to use my words like that. So to hear a grown adult who is older than me use her platform and use her words this irresponsibly, I would say, and let me clarify something. It's not irresponsible because it offends people. I just feel like it's not that hard to understand that there are going to be consequences to what you put out publicly about yourself. And if you are willing to call somebody names publicly and to disrespect people publicly based on how they look, whether or not it's healthy for them to look like that, it doesn't matter. It still says something about your character that you were perfectly fine with putting that out there about yourself. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I don't see how you would feel comfortable doing that. But, you know, she does. It is what it is. Whatever. I just don't understand. Because it does make you seem like a jerk. It makes you seem kind of like a mean person, to be honest. And then in regard to the whole no such thing as bad publicity thing, what's the probability that she would have taken this approach of calling people whales, at least doing so repeatedly? What's the probability that she would have kept this whole thing going and doubled down, etc., if she knew nobody would react to it? If she knew it wouldn't be controversial, would she have kept up with it? That's my question. I think in general what you've got here is these people constantly talking about how the problem with women is this and the problem with men is that. And I'd like to know how that's different from saying the problem with this race over here is this and the problem with this race over here is that. Because these are characteristics that, you know, we can't change about ourselves. I can't change the fact that I'm a woman, just like somebody can't change the fact that they're a man. Like, it just is what it is. Somebody can't change the fact that they were born in America and they're American. You know, it's pretty crazy, right? But I bring this up not in as much as how relevant or appropriate a specific subject is, but more in the sense that you're just generalizing like a whole group of people when you approach it like this. I mean, we accept, for the most part, that almost every situation has an exception to the rule. I mean, some people don't accept that, but I would accept that pretty much every situation has an exception to the rule. And so my question is, why generalize? Why? Because there's always going to be an exception to the rule, and how big or small that exception is, you don't know. So why generalize? That's pretty much my point there. But I think our culture has done us, both men and women, a disservice. We can all speculate and argue about how it's happened or why it's happened or when it started or which of the powers that be did it. But ultimately a disservice has been done and continues to be done. I mean, boys no longer understand what will be expected of them as men, because as a culture in the United States, we no longer know what a man is. girls no longer understand what will be expected of them as women, because again, as a culture in the United States, we no longer know what a woman is. And, it is very, very unfortunate that this is the case. But at the same time, I don't think that sitting around a recording studio lamenting the flaws of women as a whole and the flaws of men as a whole is really gonna get us anywhere. But without further ado, and I know that's typically something that people say like leading up to something exciting, I thought I would be special and use it to lead up to something not so exciting, which is me ending this episode, because that is all for this week's episode of Subtle Rampage. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and or follow the podcast on your streaming platform of choice. New episodes drop every Wednesday, so make sure you don't miss out on any new content. Thanks for listening.